Welcome to our online seminar From Big Data to Best Data. We are your guides. You can see me already. My name is Elina Bäder and I'm the Head of Marketing and Communication at beDirect. Working for many years now in the areas of multimedia customer communication as well as sales promotional communication strategies. Today I will be your guide, metaphorically speaking, on an exciting voyage through difficult waters. Big data is the current buzzword. But how do you use data and information to its best advantage for your company? This is exactly why I am taking you on this voyage. A voyage to successful data usage. Together we will safely sail past all those rocky cliffs and dangerous shoals. At our destination we will have wealth of information and suggestions on board that you can immediately put into use. So that you can win out against the competition, so that you can achieve your company's goals, so that you are not swamped in the sea of information. And perhaps too, I will succeed in entertaining you a bit during our interesting and varied trip. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you how, using big data, you can lay the foundations for your successful big data strategy, so that you can turn big data into best data. And with that, we are underway. If you believe what the proponents of big data are saying, in the next decade, data will be just as important as raw materials, labor or capital. Out of the flood of data that we produce, data analysts and statisticians produce a concrete picture of what we've done, what we are doing, and what we are going to do. This big data world processes and analyzes enormous amounts of data, ruling out accidents and chance at every step, at least for those who read the information correctly. You don't need to be a supporter of the big data idea, but it is an undisputed fact that knowing how to properly handle and work with data is going to become a decisive competitive factor in business. In other words, only those who can meaningfully utilize these streams of data will make it on the market. But this will only work if the right basis has been put in place. Read, when the master data is correct and put up to date. And this is the main point of my talk today. To better understand this, we'll stay with this chart and focus our attention to the source. The big data lake. This is an enormous reservoir of data and the finest bits of information. On the one hand, we have classic data sources, such as sales information and marketing measures. Then we have digital sources, tracks that people and businesses leave all over the place. But the challenge here with the wide variety of new sources. These pieces of information are, above all, difficult to analyze and evaluate because they are unstructured. And this is because they have widely varying forms. We could, for instance, be dealing with documents, images or texts, just to name a few. And the volume is continuously growing. We estimate that 90% of today's available data was created within the past 2 years. Thus, new and more information is flowing out of newly created sources in a more or less unstructured form into your company's databases. So that we don't drown in this flood, we need to have a good overview and grasp of this information. Our base camp for reviewing our equipment and defining our goal is the data audit. To achieve this, we need to examine the entire customer database. We statistically evaluate the information according to structure and content. From this, we develop binding recommendations for our customers. Our goals: high data quality. Quantifiable: time expenditure. Justifiable: use-oriented investment. The data audit ensures, therefore, the success of the project before the project begins. It shows you where you stand with your customer master data. Are there duplicates? Are the addresses correct, and if not, can they be corrected? Addresses have a supplemental status identifier indicating whether the information is current and up to date, or whether there is some negative association problem with the company, insolvent, under reorganization, etc. The company information contained in our customer addresses is checked and enriched, such as employee details and turnover information. A fundamental check is the best basis for all further measures to ensure data quality. When the data audit is finished, you know exactly where you stand. Next, we will jointly agree our goals and next steps. These days, it seems like everything revolves around acquiring new customers. Sometimes it seems as though you have to either buy or bribe them, rather than convince them of what you can do for them. But however, you get new customers. As soon as a new customer has placed an order with you, he becomes an existing customer. And that means you want to look after him and ensure that you build a long-term relationship with him. This is at least as important as acquiring new customers. Winning new customers and looking after existing customers. This is not an either-or proposition. If you only opt for the one, you lose the other. And at the same time, you are risking your own financial success. Let's take a moment to look at the existing customer side of things. You can classify your customers based on their purchasing habits. We'll borrow the BCG market analysis matrix to help us further explain things. We'll assume you group your customers according to the turnover they produce. You take into account the costs arising for each customer. You'll know then whether a customer actually delivers the minimum profit margin, or whether, in the worst case, he generates more costs than profits. Among your customers, you'll have your real golden geese. These are your stars and cash cows. And you would, of course, like to have more of these. Those that minimize your profits, we'll call them poor dogs, you leave out. So, how do you utilize the right potential? Well, you can only do that once you have made a thorough assessment of your existing customers. The more customers you have, the more addresses you'll have in your customer database. Not all customers are of equal value to you. You can't recognize the individual potential here. You'll become lost in the jungle. You as a company will waste your resources and get nowhere. This is why it is so important that you know the status of your customers' companies. This is the only way you can make the right decisions for your business objectives. Here are 3 examples of how you can reassess your existing addresses. For customers that are already insolvent, you would amend their payment terms. This means you reduce the risk of defaults and bad debts. You remove customers who have objected to the use of their data under the terms of the BDSG, the German Federal Data Protection Act, from your standardized marketing campaigns. Irrelevant email addresses, such as management companies, would not even be written in the first place. Doing all this saves you money. These examples have one thing in common. A status identifier provides a decisive indication for the optimized use of your capacities, for the later success of sales and marketing campaigns. Consider this identifier as signposting for the data streams. Follow it so that you don't get lost in the out-of-date address jungle. This means you will avoid unnecessary trips that get you nowhere, and cost you time and money. But even when things look calm and peaceful, dangers are lurking just under the surface. The success of your customer database depends on your employees working with it. But when a multitude of users are entering data, errors are inevitable. Particularly frequent are multiple entries for the same customer, known as duplicates. beDirect commissioned a study on this topic. For this, we evaluated around 1,500 databases. Over 70% of these showed a measurably large number of duplicates. 11% of these databases analyzed had a duplicate rate of some 10% or more. Duplicates aren't just duplicates. There are a number of different kinds, and you have to know what these are to be able to find them, remove them, and avoid them. Intra-list duplicates are datasets that appear multiple times in a slightly varied form. A large proportion of intra-list duplicates can be identified using automation. To do this, you need a high-quality duplicate removal software. For hidden duplicates, this is more difficult. These are unrecognized double entries that arise when, for example, a company changes names or owners. From that point on, both sets of company information exist in the database. Using purely machine-based comparisons, these duplicates cannot be identified because the program cannot automatically recognize that it is dealing with one and the same company. These sorts of hidden duplicates can only be found by comparing entries with a reference database that also contains historical data. Why is it so important to find duplicates and remove them? Because they can become very expensive. For a number of reasons. First, if you have multiple recipients stored in your database, they will receive all the same mail-out materials multiple times. This means you're producing higher amounts of printed materials than you need to. You're also paying multiple postage costs. These are unnecessary expenses that you can do without. Second, it becomes even more expensive if a customer entry in your database has been locked because, for example, he has failed to pay or has become insolvent. If he makes it unnoticed back into your database using a different company name, he can merrily continue to place orders with you, once again without paying. This is an unnecessary risk that you don't have to take. Third, duplicates lead to an artificially bloated database. Thus, you assume you have more customers than you in fact actually have. That means your database does not reflect your business reality. Quite the contrary. It presents you with misleading information. This can negatively affect strategic decisions in your business. For example, predictions regarding your investment needs. So just another danger for your business that you can avoid. Now, let's have a look at our second customer group, new customers and businesses that should be new customers. To be able to approach potential new customers, you need to have their addresses. For this, it is absolutely imperative that you have the right data partner. But how can you tell if you are dealing with a serious data provider? A serious data provider makes a point of advertising high-quality standards, and he lives up to these. Having a current address for a new prospect is the prerequisite for ensuring that your advertising materials reach their intended recipients. A serious data provider offers numerous selection criteria so that you can exactly determine your target group. This ensures that your recipients have an actual need for your services. A serious data provider supplements the company address with a contact name and specialist who deals with the area or areas you cover. In other words, your mailing arrives on the desk of exactly the person best placed to deal with your offer or services. It doesn't just get tossed onto a pile at the bottom of the company's correspondence. A serious data provider offers screened and credit-approved business addresses, because at the end of the day, it is not about the number of customers you get. It's about whether they can pay for the products they order. But even a thorough credit assessment is no guarantee. However, having solvent customers does reduce the risk of non-payment. A serious data provider comes at a price. Good, up-to-date data costs money and requires some effort to obtain and manage. Bargain basement offers can, for the reason already mentioned, become very expensive very quickly. How far you open your locks to acquire new customers depends on many factors. Even when you have enormous capacities, the market is limited. And exactly for this reason, you should exploit it to the full. In Germany, it is reasonable to expect a complete database to have some 3.2 million addresses. If you are working with a high-quality set of standards, it is not possible to deliver more than this, quite simply because there are no more businesses than this. If you buy more, you are probably paying for useless addresses or duplicates. On the other hand, if a database has fewer data sets than this, it probably does not contain all your potential customers. That means you're missing out on your potential. How can this figure be explained? There are roughly 0.9 million companies listed in the German trade register. 0.1 million are clubs, organizations and non-profit companies, and 2.2 million freelancers, small businesses and mid-sized companies. Based on your criteria, you can select and limit your choices. You basically decide how far you want to open your locks for new customers. If you ever run aground, it takes a lot of effort to get the good ship business back out into navigable waters. Thus, it's best to plot a straight course to begin with. There is a simple solution that obviates the need to go back and correct mistakes. Don't make any to begin with. And that includes where data is first collected. This is called the right first time system. All your data is quickly and flexibly accessible, and it all remains clean and duplicate free. We call this optimized data capture bServe. With bServe, you can ensure that all employees can intuitively get to grips with using the system. Let's look at two workflows and see how simple and user-friendly a data acquisition system can be. Entry error number 1. Creating a duplicate. Just imagine, I am a new customer and I decide to give you a call. You begin the order process by entering my address in your database. Without duplicates, of course, in 5 steps. You enter the company name in the search field, beDirect. You have to do this yourself without me spelling it to you. This in itself is enough to cause you to make spelling mistakes. But if you are using an error-tolerant system, it doesn't matter. From the list of hits returned, you just select the desired dataset. By using the detailed view during the call, you can be certain that you have selected the correct dataset. At the same time, you can get an initial feeling for what sort of company you are dealing with on the other end of the phone line. Now you try to save the new customer address. The system now tells you, this address already exists in your current list of customers. You can now either choose to exit this step or go back to your lists of hits. The newly entered address is now stored in your system and contains all company and contact information. Entry error number 2. Entering an outdated address. In 4 steps, you can ensure that you are exclusively entering current addresses. As with every new entry, you begin by entering the company name in the search field. The system then offers you 4 addresses to choose from. Before saving your choice, however, the system informs you that you have chosen an old address for the company in question. So it is not possible to make an incorrect entry, because the current address for the out-of-date entry is offered to you by the system. Using the detailed view, you can easily make your decision. You then save the correct entry to your system. We are still traveling at full speed and we want to progress even faster. So we are going to sail where additional sources will accelerate our data stream. Use Enrichment Sources. So far, all our steps were targeted at correcting and updating your master data. But there is even more information about your customers out there. The more of this you have, the more effective your business dealings become. So it makes sense to enrich your customer addresses with additional information. And that means using the information you really need. This could be standard information about the size of a company, or it could be communications information, or it could even be notes on what industries and fields a company is active in. Using this information, you can improve your analysis results. The corporate relationship between companies is of particular interest in purchasing. See at a glance which of your suppliers belong together. Then you can often obtain better conditions when making strategic purchases. You will be surprised what discounts many providers offer if the right volume of purchases are made. And sales even profits from this corporate information. Are you already successfully working with one company in a group? Take advantage of this and add a sister company to your list of companies. Here you can see beDirect Corporate Network Hierarchy. Up to now you have invested a lot of work in your data quality concept. The cleansing and enrichment steps were necessary because addresses and data undergo constant change. Each year there are approximately 1 million changes in data. This includes changes in CEO, move of address, or insolvency. So it's important to stay on top of things. By being vigilant with addresses and all address components, nothing will get by you. A supplier files for insolvency and you are able to react in good time and thus have alternatives up your sleeve. An important customer has a change in CEO and you use this as an opportunity to stabilize your business relationship. A customer moves site, but you won't lose track on him. By monitoring your database, your data quality concept forms a closed loop. Welcome to Best Data City. Everything that I have described to you up to now is targeted at your goals. The right data for your company's success, the optimal utilization of all data, the efficient use of all business areas, guaranteeing the long-term realization of your best data situation. If you implement these measures, you will be well equipped for working with big data. And what's more, you will outsail your competition because they will still be adrift on the enormous ocean of data we have been discussing. With best data, you can chart a clear course to success. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed our online seminar, please let others know. If you have any suggestions, please give me a call. I'd be happy to hear your feedback.